Hi everybody. My name is Amy and I'm one of the librarians who works in the Pennsylvania department at Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about why I really like the census as a tool for beginning genealogists, and then provide some information about why it can also be a little bit challenging when it doesn't list exactly the information that you think it should about your family. I'll start up with just some definitions. When I talk about the census today, I'm talking about the United States federal census for the most part. The federal census was first taken in 1790 and has been taken every 10 years since then. The census started out just as a way to count the population of each state for the purposes of representation in Congress. Over time, the federal government started using that information on the census for more detailed projects, and so then the questions also got more detailed over time. Various states also have done censuses, and those usually happened between the federal census years. Here in Pennsylvania, for example, the septennial census was taken every 7 years, and that documented everybody in the state who could be taxed. So it wasn't a complete population or household count like the federal census, but if your ancestor owned enough property to be taxed, they would be documented on that census. When you're looking for census records, you can find those in a couple of places. The federal census records are available in both Ancestry.com and on FamilySearch.org, and that septennial Pennsylvania census that I mentioned is located in Ancestry.com. Ancestry.com will also be your go-to spot for the state censuses that have been digitized from other states as well. So here's why I really like the census as a starting point and why I will frequently point beginners to this set of records to get started. The census really is an instant gratification info dump on your ancestors. There is nothing better than being able to fill in a whole slew of names and dates on your pedigree chart or your family group sheet, all from one document. It's a snapshot of what was going on with your family on the day the census was taken. So you will find names, you will find ages, or sometimes even birth months and years. You'll find the gender of each person, which can be really helpful if you've found names that could go either way. You'll find marital status, you'll find occupations, you'll find educational background, and different years of the census will have different information. But those are the basic facts that you will be able to find out about your family members on pretty much every census. When you're using the census, you'll want to start with the 1940 census and work your way backwards. 1940 is the most recent census that is available for all of the individual family information that is valuable for genealogy research. The Census Bureau keeps the census private for 72 years, so the main demographic information gets released, but the individual family level information is private for 72 years. So if you're working ahead of me on the math, you'll know that means the 1950 census will become available in 2 years, and genealogists everywhere will be having a big party at all of the new information they'll be able to get their hands on. So starting with 1940, work backwards and find every record that you can that has your ancestor in it. Once you have every record, please go to census.gov and get the enumerator instructions that go with each year. The enumerator instructions tell the person who was literally going door to door and handwriting all of this information the right way to record the information. So when you get the enumerator instructions, you'll see that in certain years they were supposed to list family members in a certain order based on their relationships to each other. You'll also see information in those enumerator instructions on what the various abbreviations on each census mean. So if you're seeing something you're not quite sure what it meant, that will be detailed in those enumerator instructions. So here's where the census can also be a little bit challenging for beginners. There's a lot of great information that's staring you in the face. There's that coded information, but there's also some wrong information. The accuracy of the census is a well-known and much lamented issue in genealogy. So why is the census so inaccurate? Well, there are a couple of different reasons. The first thing you want to think about when you're looking at a census record is who gave the information. If the family wasn't home the day that the enumerator knocked on the door, they may have gone to a neighbor and asked who lives there and gotten the information from the neighbor. And if the neighbor wasn't sure exactly how old the kids were, they may have guessed. The census taker may have knocked on the door and no parents were home because they were working, but the children were home, and the children may have provided some inaccurate information about exactly where their parents were born or when. You have to think about the potential for a language barrier between the census taker and the enumerator. Was there an accent that made it difficult for someone to understand the question or difficult to understand the answer to the question? When you encounter variant spellings for your ancestors' names, you have to be thinking about those accents as well as whether your ancestors were literate to be able to explain to the census taker how to spell their name correctly. The final component of the inaccuracy of the census is that it is all self-reported information. The family did not have to go get out birth certificates to prove when and where anybody in the household was born. They did not have to go and get their naturalization papers if they said they were naturalized. What they told the enumerator was taken as fact and written down. So if things are not quite what you were expecting to see, that may be why. But you can still use the census, even if it doesn't exactly match what you were thinking you'd find, as a roadmap to find additional documents that do confirm the information you're looking for. So even if all you get is that a new family member was born between 1910 and 1920, you now have a 10-year span in which to search for that person's birth information. Compare the listing on the census sheet with what you do know about your family to make sure that you're researching the right group of people. There's nothing worse than researching Joe Smith for 6 weeks only to realize you're researching the wrong Joe Smith. And finally, look at the different questions on each census and see what new information was captured each time. For example, in the 1940 census, people were asked if they lived in the same place in 1935. That can be a clue for you to do some additional research depending on their yes or no answer. In 1910, women were asked how many children they had given birth to compared to how many were still living. So this would be an introduction to some new family members that you hadn't known about if they were just babies who didn't make it. That's all I wanted to talk about with the census today. Actually, one more thing. 2020 is a census year, so if you haven't done so already, please take a few minutes to fill out the postcard that you got in the mail or go online and fill out the census. This is really important because the census is what determines how Pennsylvania is represented in Congress and how federal funding that's based on population is spread out to the states. So we want to make sure everyone in Pennsylvania is counted and counted accurately in order to make sure everything like that is done fairly. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye.